In patients with ST segment elevation MI and ischemic symptoms for less than 12 hours, PCI should be performed to improve survival. This is class 1 recommendation. In patients with ST segment elevation MI and cardiogenic shock or hemodynamic stability, PCI, or when PCI is not feasible, CABG is indicated to improve survival irrespective of time delay from onset of myocardial infarction. And this is class 1 recommendation. In patients with ST segment elevation MI who have mechanical complications like ventricular septal rupture, mitral valve insufficiency because of papillary muscle infarction or papillary muscle rupture, or free wall rupture, CABG is recommended at the time of surgery. And this is class 1 recommendation. In patients with ST segment elevation MI and evidence of failed reperfusion after fibrinolytic therapy, rescue PCI of the infarct artery should be performed to improve clinical outcomes, and this is again class 1 recommendation. In patients with ST segment elevation MI who are treated with fibrinolytic therapy, angiography within 3 to 24 hours of fibrinolysis is reasonable to improve clinical outcomes, and this is class 2A recommendation. In patients with ST segment elevation MI who are stable and are presenting 12 to 24 hours after the onset of symptoms, PCI is reasonable to improve clinical outcomes, and this is class 2A recommendation. In patients with ST segment elevation MI in whom PCI is not feasible or not successful with a large area of myocardium at risk, emergency or urgent CABG can be used as a reperfusion modality to improve clinical outcomes, and this is class 2A recommendation. In patients with STEMI with ongoing ischemia or acute severe heart failure or life-threatening arrhythmia, PCI is beneficial in improving clinical outcomes irrespective of time delay from symptom onset, and this is class 2A recommendation. In asymptomatic patients who are stable who had ST segment elevation MI with totally occluded infarcted artery more than 24 hours after the symptom onset and without the evidence of severe ischemia, PCI should not be performed. In patients with ST segment elevation MI, emergency CABG should not be performed after failed PCI in absence of ischemia or in absence of large myocardium at risk, or if surgical revascularization is not feasible because of a no reflow state or poor distal targets. Now, talking about each of these points individually, what we know is that in patients with STEMI or ST segment elevation MI, primary PCI is superior to fibrinolysis for improving outcomes and mortality rate. Fibrinolytic therapy is recommended only when PCI is not immediately available. That is, when we expect that the time delay from onset of symptoms to transport to a PCI capable center is going to take more than 2 hours, then fibrinolysis is done. Why is fibrinolysis not the first treatment modality which we use in patients with ST segment elevation MI? This is because approximately 35% of patients who get treated with fibrinolysis do not achieve reperfusion. Approximately 10% of the patients have less than TIMI grade 3 flow after fibrinolysis. CABG has got a very limited role in patients who present to us in acute phase of MI, and this is because of increased risk of mortality after ST segment elevation MI associated with CABG. What to do with the patients with ST segment elevation MI complicated by cardiogenic shock? Early revascularization. So early revascularization in patients with ST segment elevation MI with cardiogenic shock is associated with significant improvement in survival. Shock trial has shown that in patients with cardiogenic shock and ST segment elevation MI, the 30-day survival was not improved with early revascularization compared to medical stabilization. However, 6 months survival was significantly better in patients who received early PCI or CABG. What about the patients who have got a mechanical complication? So, the mortality for patients who require emergency CABG and surgical management of mechanical complication is very high. Few percutaneous techniques are available. Mechanical support devices can be useful in patients who have got mechanical complications of ST segment elevation MI. Urgent or emergency surgery is the best possible treatment for these patients. What is rescue PCI? Rescue PCI is PCI performed after failed reperfusion with fibrinolytic therapy. What are the issues associated with rescue PCI? So we can very well understand that patients who have received fibrinolytic therapy are at higher risk of bleeding, and these patients, when taken up for PCI, can land up into cerebrovascular accidents and major bleeds. How to minimize the risk of bleeding associated with rescue PCI? It can be done by using number 1, half dose tenecteplase in patients who are more than 75 years of age. Number 2, using radial access instead of femoral access. And number 3, eliminating the routine use of GP2B3A inhibitors. What about asymptomatic patients who present to us 12 to 24 hours after the onset of symptoms for PCI? So not much is known about this subset. The BRAVE-2 trial examined the benefits of PCI in reducing the size of infarct in asymptomatic patients who had ST segment elevation MI and onset of symptoms more than 12 hours but less than 48 hours before presentation. It was a small study, and it was found that invasive strategy was associated with lesser size of LV infarct, and PCI was associated with lower adjusted Fourier mortality rate compared to the conservative strategy. What we need to understand is that there is potential harm when PCI of a totally occluded artery is performed more than 24 hours after the symptom onset. The delayed PCI of infarct artery more than 24 hours after the symptom onset should be considered only if there is a flowing artery or a patent artery. There are no randomized controlled trials which have examined the benefits of PCI in patients who present to us more than 12 hours after symptom onset and have the evidence of ischemia, acute heart failure, or life-threatening arrhythmia. In these patients, delayed reperfusion is expected to improve symptoms and outcomes, and for this reason, PCI should always be considered in these subset of patients. What about the patients who present to us after 3 days of myocardial infarction? So, OAT trial had included the patients who had a total occlusion of the infarct-related artery and those who presented to the healthcare system 3 to 20 days after the onset of symptoms. These patients were stable or asymptomatic. The trial found that PCI did not reduce the risk of death, reinfarction, or heart failure, and there was a trend towards excessive reinfarction during the 4 years follow-up in these stable patients. It is important to note that in this study, patients were included if they had a high-risk criteria. That is, they had an ejection fraction of less than 50% or had proximal occlusion of a major epicardial vessel with large area at risk, or both. This trial had not included patients with significant heart failure, shock, or acute kidney injury, or significant left main disease, or triple vessel disease, or patients with symptoms at rest, or severe ischemia on stress testing. It is important to know which patients are we talking about here. Similarly, in the DECOPY trial, it was found that if revascularization was carried out 2 to 15 days after symptom onset, there was no difference in clinical outcomes at 34 months, and overall cost had increased for the patients who were in the PTCA group. Emergency surgery should be considered only in those patients who have failed PCI and have got ongoing ischemia and have a large area of myocardium at risk. If we summarize this, what we can understand is patients who have got ST segment elevation MI and ischemic symptoms and have symptoms from less than 12 hours, PCI is class 1 recommendation. Primary PCI is class 1 recommendation if it is feasible. If PCI is not feasible and there is large area of myocardium at risk, then CABG should be undertaken, and this is class 2A recommendation. If symptom onset is more than equal to 12 hours, then PCI should be undertaken if there is cardiogenic shock or heart failure. This is class 1 recommendation. If PCI is not feasible, class 1 recommendation is for CABG. If onset of symptoms is for more than 12 hours and patient is in cardiogenic shock or heart failure and PCI is feasible, then PCI should be undertaken. If PCI is not feasible, CABG becomes class 1 recommendation. If symptom onset is for more than 12 hours and patient has ongoing ischemia, heart failure or electrical instability, then PCI is class 2A recommendation. If symptoms are persistent within 12 to 24 hours, then PCI should be undertaken. This is class 2A recommendation. If symptom onset is for more than 12 hours and there are totally occluded arteries for more than 24 hours and there is no symptom and there is no evidence of significant ischemia, PCI should not be performed. Now, talking about the revascularization of the non-infarct related artery in patients with ST segment elevation MI. So, in patients who are stable, who had STEMI and had multivessel disease, after successful PCI, staged PCI of significant non-infarct related artery is recommended, and this has class 1 recommendation. It has been found that it reduces the risk of death and MI. In patients with ST segment elevation MI and complex multivessel disease in the non-infarct related artery, after successful primary PCI, elective CABG can be done to reduce the risk of cardiac events, and this is class 2A recommendation. In selected patients with STEMI and low complexity multivessel disease, PCI of non-infarct related artery can be considered at the time of primary PCI to reduce cardiac events. This is class 2B recommendation. This is to be performed in very selected patients. In patients with STEMI complicated by cardiogenic shock, routine PCI of non-infarct related artery at the time of primary PCI should not be done. It increases the risk of death and renal failure. Now, discussing about these points in detail, first about the multivessel PCI. So, a heart team approach is required for deciding the optimal revascularization strategy for patients with ST segment elevation MI and multivessel CAD. There are multiple options which can be offered for patients with ST segment elevation MI and multivessel disease, and these include multivessel PCI at the time of primary PCI. Number 2, PCI of the infarct related artery followed by the staged PCI of non-infarct related artery. Number 3, PCI of the infarct related artery with ischemia guided approach to non-infarct related artery. And number 4, PCI of the infarct related artery and elective CABG for the other non-infarct related arteries. Various studies have given very conflicting results. However, what we understand is that data is strongest for patients undergoing staged PCI. Which type of patients should go for CABG after primary PCI? So, patients who have got significant left main disease, chronic total occlusion of non-infarct related arteries, or complex disease in non-infarct related artery might also be considered for CABG. When trials had compared staged PCI to culprit artery only PCI, they had found consistently that staged PCI is better than the culprit vessel PCI only. Only a few years back, complete trial was published in New England Journal of Medicine, and it had included approximately 4,000 patients with ST segment elevation MI. In this trial, it was found that in patients with ST segment elevation MI and multivessel CAD, complete revascularization was superior to culprit lesion only PCI. So, complete revascularization was better in reducing cardiovascular death, it was better in reducing myocardial infarction, as well as risk of cardiovascular death, myocardial infarction, or ischemia driven revascularization. Complete revascularization resulted in 26% lower risk of composite of death from cardiovascular causes or new onset myocardial infarction at 3 years. There was 32% lower risk of new and non-fatal MI in complete revascularization group, and there was no significant difference in the risk of bleeding between the two groups, and the benefits were consistent irrespective of the timing of the non-infarct related artery PCI. Trials have shown a reduction in major adverse cardiovascular events with multivessel PCI performed at the time of primary PCI as compared to culprit artery only PCI. This benefit is primarily because of decrease in repeat revascularization, which patient should be selected for PCI of non-infarct related artery at the time of primary PCI. So these patients should have uncomplicated PCI of infarct related artery and low complexity disease in the non-infarct related arteries, and should have normal LV filling pressures and normal KFT or normal renal functions. What are the subset of patients for whom culprit vessel only PCI is recommended? Culprit vessel only primary PCI is recommended as the primary PCI strategy of choice for patients who have got S3 segment elevation MI with cardiogenic shock. Culprit shock trial had shown that in patients with acute myocardial infarction with cardiogenic shock, multivessel PCI at the time of primary PCI increase the chances of death and the need for renal replacement therapy. So summarizing the revascularization strategies for non-infarct related artery management in patients with STEMI, if patient presents with S3 segment elevation MI, then the first step which is to be done is primary PCI of the infarct related artery. Then we have to see the clinical scenario. If there is cardiogenic shock, then infarct related artery only PCI is sufficient. If cardiogenic shock is not there, then we can consider staged PCI for multivessel disease. If the lesion has got low complexity, LV filling pressures are normal, then this staged PCI can be performed at the time of primary PCI. If lesions are complex and LV filling pressures are high, then it is advisable to do staged PCI. You are listening to CardioEd, and we'll meet again in another episode.